Welcome to Career in Ruins, when this week we're down under.
Down under. That sounds good.
Sneaky hints of what's to come for today's podcast. How are you, Derek?
I'm good. As soon as you said we're down under, my mind instantly went to Saturday night's Strictly Come Dancing, which to our American viewers is a bit like Dancing with the Stars, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's got Paul Robinson from Neighbours on it, and his first dance was to the Neighbours theme. And Carl Kennedy was sat in the crowd.
Do you know what? I've seen Carl Kennedy play live before.
Me too. Fire Station.
Fire Station. Classic. How's your week been? All right?
Yeah, it's cracking, actually. It's my first week back teaching. I'm no longer a head of department, so I can go in, teach some things, spend time with students, and then clock off at 5 and come home. It's been bloody marvellous.
Dreamy, dreamy. Anything catching your attention?
Yeah, I want to turn back the clock a few weeks, actually. I can't remember. Remind me, bearing in mind in the UK it's early-ish in the morning and I only just got up, so my brain's a bit foggy. In the last pod, did we talk about my slightly posh dinner I had? Oh, you'll enjoy this. So
Okay.
it kind
You
of...
talking fish and chips?
Oh no, it was sort of silver service. It was proper posh.
Toby Carvery, eh?
Yeah, you know it. But it got me thinking about how people outside of archaeology love archaeology, and I wanted to bring it up here because it just reminded me of how genuinely interesting a lot of the things we do is, and yet we tend to forget about it. So I was invited to this very lovely dinner with the university board and the vice chancellor and lots of seemingly very important people who were all lovely and very welcoming, and we were there to give a little talk on archaeology. So we thought, okay, well, I was there with my wonderful colleague Dr. Miles Russell. And we thought, okay, we'll turn up. We'll have a nice dinner. This is good. We'll get paid in food, and then we'll go and do a talk, and we'll sneak off at the end. We'll rustle away. But what was fascinating from the moment we sat down with all of these people there to chat about the university and how to make it better and all of this, I don't think a moment went by we weren't talking about archaeology in some way or another, chatting about digs, chatting about where we work, chatting about how we study the past, a whole cross-section. And it was just, for me, it was a very different crowd. Like my normal crowd is 18, 19, 20-year-olds. We go through lecture material, we chat about assignments and stuff. But to have people kind of a cross-section of industry, let's say, dead keen on just learning what we do, the practical side of it, what our students experience. It was overall, it was quite a eye-opening and pleasant, nice, enjoyable experience.
Excellent. And presumably it paid no doubt, or it was caused no harm to enthuse all the bigwigs that are making the big decisions in the university.
I don't think it hurts. It was very good. And to be honest, everyone was lovely, and it was great to share what we do in our little tiny corner of the university with all of the kind of power players, I guess, within the system. So it was great. But how about you? What's been on your mind?
Just very quickly, did anyone ask you or say anything about geology, or say how much they love dinosaurs, or did they all behave?
The first question I got was, talk to me about the dinosaurs at Kimmeridge.
Oh, cry. Oh, come on, guys. Well, I guess this highlights the importance of talks like this.
Exactly. I managed to pivot it, though. I didn't go for it's not dinosaurs, pal. I went for to be honest, the most interesting thing about Kimmeridge is its Roman heritage and the fact that the grand fishbones of Roman Palace were made from the mudstones at Kimmeridge. So I turned it on its head.
Well done. You ignorant idiot.
Derek gets fired.
Speaking of ignorance, there's something I want to talk to you about, but I haven't got enough time because it's going to be a huge rant. But I want to talk maybe on the next podcast about heritage crime, but I won't touch
Ooh.
that now because we're running short on time. But one thing I do want to talk about, those of you that have listened to past podcasts or that follow us on YouTube will have seen we recently re-released our Star Trek special, Archaeology and Star Trek. And I've been watching the latest series of Strange New Worlds, fast becoming my favorite Star Trek series
Agreed.
ever. It's just amazing. But there's a lot of archaeology in the latest season or series, and some pretty questionable approaches, as ever, I think, within Star Trek. But I now know that ley lines are real. Do you know that? So, as an archaeological
Yeah.
professional, I'd always just assumed it's a nonsense. But no, I mean, Star Trek is my Bible, and now I know they've discovered ley lines are real, and actually, what they're used for is interdimensional travel.
Well, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
And that's why there's always archaeological sites and temples and things like that in the middle of a ley line crossing, because it's almost like a bus station.
Okay. Well, that certainly won't do any harm with any ancient alien theories we're trying to do away with. So,
yeah, I'm just going to lean into it, pal. Just lean into it.
Fair enough.
I don't hate that Star Trek is leaning into it because it is a made up fantasy world. So if anyone wants to look at it in a reality, then they are using made up fantasy worlds as points of reference.
Yeah, but fair enough. Point well made.
Anyway, yeah, if you haven't watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds, go and watch it. It's just the best.
I'm chugging through. I'm still in the first season at the moment.
Oh, come on. Stop working on an edit for Career in Ruins in the Field and start watching more Star Trek.
I mean, that's a beautiful segue that you bring that up because we launched our first teaser this week, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we've been getting content out, haven't we? We've had two videos go out for some of the shots and a bit of a promo for Career in Ruins in the Field, or Back in the Field as we're calling it. Very exciting. Lots of lovely shots from our cameraman Ben Thomas and whatnot. But also, we've been getting other bits and bobs out. We put the Battle of the Bulge video out. We've had obviously our past podcasts which are now video. So if you're listening to this in audio, you can go back and see the lovely faces of the people that come and talk to us.
Exactly, and this is my time, I think, for a plea to our loyal podcast listeners, because we see our podcast listeners as our family. I think we've been with you for a long time. We know that many of you come back and listen to many episodes, and we'd love you to go and have a look at our YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe already, get on there and subscribe. Have a look at our videos. Help boost those numbers up a bit. That always helps, and just see what we've been up to, because we're really excited to be sharing content in this new way. When we first got into podcasting, it was very much not an easy option, but a straightforward option, and we didn't have to worry about our facial expressions. We didn't have to get dressed. We could just turn up and talk.
I forgot I was looking at my mobile then, and then I started listening to what you were saying. I was like, oh crap.
But we've decided to take the leap and commit to video media as well. So do head on over there and check us out and leave us comments. And we always read the comments. We always check in on the comments. So do go and have a look.
Yes, exactly. But that's enough about past podcast video extravagandas. What is today's podcast video extravaganza?
Today is great. And as we said at the very beginning, today Career in Ruins is going down under. And we are joined by Dr. Samuel Dix from Flinders University, who is an expert in conflict archaeology. And reading through his bio has lots of very, very interesting things that I could not do justice to. So I'm going to let him talk through them in a minute. But welcome, Sam.
Hey guys, how are you? Good to see you.
Great to see you, Sam. Thanks
for having me
for
on.
joining us. Unfortunately, the time difference, as people might imagine, is quite different. So it's what time is it here? Okay, it's 9:45. So that's what's that?
Yeah,
7 o'clock in
6:45 here. It's beer o'clock.
Beer o'clock. Ah, see, I'm just on a simple black coffee with my lovely Bastogne mug, actually.
Oh, lovely.
It's so good to have you, Sam. Thank you for finding the time. I know you're on your holidays as well at the moment, so we're feeling very privileged to have you join us.
I'm happy.
I'm sure I know through messaging with you, you've listened to a number of podcasts in the past, and you're an active engager with some of our bits that we've been putting out. So you know the format. Let's get going. Let's dive straight in. Tell us, Sam, about your career in ruins.
Mine started very early off. I was one of those very, uh, uh, one of those children that knew what they wanted to do from a very young age. So I was from about 3 or 4 years old when I could actually say the word. My parents assured me that that's what I wanted to do. I used to run around the yard burying things and digging them up later, or finding old chicken bones and bits and pieces I can put in there, and a year later find it. So I had a very early start to archaeology. So I sort of pursued that all throughout my childhood. I madly read on anything I could get my hands on. And I was only thinking about this today, actually. One of my first real sort of experiences on an archaeological site. And it was quite, when I think back on it now, I think back because he was a lovely archaeologist. I still keep in contact with him now after all these years. I would have been about 10 or 11 years old, probably just a smidge older. And my dad was a police officer, and he was out about in the city of Hobart. So I grew up in Tasmania, and the little small island at the bottom. And he stopped his police car, and he walked over to this archaeological dig that was going on in full uniform. I think it must have scared the bejeepers out of these. David, his name was, to see this police officer come over, thinking, "Oh no, what have I done wrong? What's happening?" And he said, "Oh, listen, my son's always been interested in archaeology. Could I bring him along?" And he did. Yeah, so I got chauffeured in the police car to this dig site when I was a young lad. And yeah, David Parham, he's still around doing archaeology in Tasmania. Sort of took me under his wing a little bit. Yeah, he's teed up my first work experience because in year 9, year 10 of high school, we had to do a work experience session for a week. And a lot of people were going to, the McDonald's and places like this. And I thought, no, well, I want to be an archaeologist. So I'm going to try to get in an archaeology position for this work experience. So David actually put my name forward to the Tasmanian Parks and Wildlife Service, who were doing a lot of archaeology at the time. And for a week, I got whisked away to the northwest of Tasmania, where back then there was no phone reception, no mobile phones. The digital camera had just been, we had our 1 megapixel digital camera that we got issued from the government, and we
Right,
were all
sure
very
enough there.
excited. Yeah, there you go. I'm showing a bit my age now, aren't I? So I was able to spend a week out in the wild. The teachers couldn't contact me, parents couldn't contact me. No one knew what was going on. I had an absolute ball. We went around, recorded heaps of Aboriginal sites. We were doing predominantly Aboriginal sites up in that area. And yeah, I rolled into oh yeah, I should have. Sorry. It was 16 when I started my first, I guess my first real professional dig. I went down to the Port Arthur historic site. Literally, my parents used to drive me down there for Christmas holidays, and I used to live on site there, digging around, processing artifacts. I come home for Christmas, then I go back again, and this is all obviously pre me getting a license. So I lived off. We used to get $15 a day. We used to live in a manky little hostel. But we made it nice in the end. A one saucepan and whatever glasses we could steal from the pub, because we couldn't furnish the place. And yeah, I started doing those every year until I started university. So I used to spend all my Christmas holidays, to the point I was in year 12, and I was just starting my year 12 year, so last year of college. And the dig had another week to go, and I got special permission from the principal to have. I got to miss the first week of year 12, so I could finish off the dig. So I got to start school late, which was brilliant. So yeah, that's how all my sort of the first foundations. I went off to university. I went to the University of New England in Armidale in New South Wales. Did all that undergrad under the belt, and yeah, it started off. We had what was called the mining boom in Australia And it literally meant that any archaeologist with any form of background was whisked away to the Pilbara region of Western Australia. So if you think of Western Australia, that northwest point where there's lots of desert and sand, that's where we were sent. And I started out doing fly in, fly out archaeology. Used to fly from Tasmania to Melbourne, Melbourne to Perth, Perth to the Pilbara, and go spend weeks out in the out in the out in the desert recording sites. Come back with a nice tan, a few red clothes because they got all the red dust up there. Yeah, I did that for a while. Then the mining boom died, and everyone lost their job overnight because we were all employees casuals, and we thought this was all great, it's going to last forever, and it didn't. I was lucky. I landed a job at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery. I managed their properties and some of their archaeology bits when they came up. Moved on to government archaeologist at the state government in Tasmania. I was mainly in charge of lots of permits and recording sites all around the place, and learning quite rapidly legislation. I think I was in my first 3 months, and they put us on a team to start rewriting the legislation on Aboriginal heritage. I'll talk a bit more about that. It's very different in Australia. We've got two different legislations. We've got legislation for Aboriginal heritage and legislation for what we call historical archaeology. So that sort of well, we can say from about the 1600s onwards, because we've got dates from about 1600 in Northern Australia. So so we set about doing that, and I learned some very quick lessons in legislation and government and politics. That I'm sure you guys have come across it yourself. Sometimes it's handy and it's good, but sometimes it's really need to avoid some of those political debates especially when it's coming up
Mhm.
into archaeology. I was there for about 5 years, and I finally decided that I need to do my PhD. And I scoured around and looked around, and because I wanted to get a scholarship, I ended up getting a scholarship. So I left my job and became a full-time student again. And went and got my PhD. I got the Australian Research Council laureate through Griffith University, and that's where I started doing a lot of my, I guess, contact and conflict sort of archaeology-based stuff. That's where I started really getting into it. So there's this field um, that we call, that contact-based archaeology. So I went off and went to the remote areas of northeast Arnhem Land in the Northern Territory, and studied a lot of rock art sites there. And I was looking at specifically contact. So I was at a place called Gillery, and it was a magnificent site, and it dates from about 15,000 years ago up until about 60 years ago. It's just constantly used under this. We had biplanes painted on the wall, World War II minesweepers, Dutch ships, Macassan praus, all these different things that Aboriginal people were seeing and observing in the landscape and putting on the thing. So large part of my thesis there was to actually understand how people react to change in the environment, especially when there's conflict and that involved as well. Which there were a lot in the missionary sort of period. And then when I graduated from my PhD, I found out I had to get a real job again. So I moved to Melbourne and started in a consulting firm there, and sort of gradually moved on to doing some more work with Flinders University through Adelaide University. That's in Adelaide. And that's where I am now. I said some awesome side missions along the line. I've worked over in Egypt, Jordan, obviously the UK a little bit, South Africa. I think that's about it. Yeah, so nice little side missions along the way, doing that new sort of international archaeology side of thing, and caught up with you fine chaps at Witch Farm for the Time Team's 30th.
Oh,
Oh.
Sam, that's fantastic. And I must admit, your story there, particularly the early bits, unlocked a deep core memory in me when you were talking about the digital camera and the 1 megapixel digital camera. I don't know if you remember this, Lawrence. Our younger listeners will have no concept of what the hell I'm talking about here. But the first site I went out on, we had one of those ruggedized 1 megapixel cameras, probably very similar to the ones that you guys had. But we also had to, because digital was new, we couldn't just use digital. So we had two analog cameras, a black and white one and a color one. And we had to take 3 photos on each, one underexposed, one overexposed, and one perfectly exposed to make sure we got that perfect archaeological shot.
We had
That sounds
exactly the
like
same, except
your life motto, Derek.
yeah, it's exactly the same when we were recording it because no one trusted the digital format. So we had to do
Mm.
a digital shot, a slide film, a color film, and black and white. So being a young lad, I was just carrying camera equipment around most of the time, really, trying to record sites and lugging this stuff around.
Was it that classic thing when you were young ones? They're like, oh, Sam can be in charge of the digital thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's either that or, oh, Sam, he's the young one, he's the smallest. We'll put him down that hole, He'll sit down there. Literally,
That
I
sounds
was
about
in a
right.
well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was down a well once, excavating a well because I was the smallest one and the one that could fit there nicely and still be able to move and excavate. So that was, I think, where the claustrophobia kicked in my life.
What's that, Lassie? Sam's down the well?
Yeah.
I should point out as well for our Northern Hemisphere listeners that Christmas holidays are a very good time to dig in Australia, right?
A very hot time. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
not out in the bleak of winter as you would be here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
Sam, I'm
even
keen. Sam, I'm keen to learn a bit more about your side quests. So you talked about some international stuff. How did you get into doing things internationally?
I just made friends, really. So the stuff I did out in South Africa, for example, my old boss when I was in the Pilbara was a South African, and we just got talking one day, and he goes, "Oh, if you're ever over there, talk to my mate." I did. I just called him up and said, "Oh yeah, you can come over. We'll do some stuff out there," and played around. I did a lot. I enjoy like I said with the contact and conflict sort of stuff. I looked at a lot of Boer War stuff, so I went out to Kimberley area and did a bit of the Boer War stuff there. Yeah, so it's been mainly people I know. When I was in Egypt, there was an Egyptologist I knew, and he was doing some stuff over there. He had some other people following him around. I was only very young at the time. I literally just started university when I decided just to pack my bags and, hey, mum, dad, I'll see you later. I'm going to Egypt. And yeah, so I knew him from a while back, and he sort of just said, "Yeah, let's go." And we were down in the south of Egypt there, around Aswan area. I'm doing some bits and pieces. So yeah, it's been mainly just people I know. That's how I sort of when I was in Cornwall. That's where I met Matt, the digital guru with Time Team. And he's the one that sort of say, "Hey, we've got a dig coming up, and you're thinking about coming over to the UK. Why don't you come over and have a scratch around on Time Team?" And I thought, oh, why not? It's been one of those things that, that sort of bucket
Yeah.
list thing, you sort of grew up with it on the TV and you sort of, oh, why not? Why not? So, yeah, it's always been like the international sort of side missions have always been the right place at the right time sort of thing, and just sort
Mm.
of getting to know people and learning about their other connections out there and how you can sort of latch on and go for the journey as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said in that for being around people, being engaged and being
Brilliant.
enthusiastic, isn't there? But they
Yeah.
tend to be the folks who get invited to the interesting projects.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, they've been really good fun. Yeah, but yeah, I guess, the vast majority of my career's been Australia based, that's it's where I live. But yeah, it's been nice to get away. It's a little bit further to fly everywhere though. We really are at the bottom of the world, and flying anywhere just takes a little bit longer.
Mm. So what did you make of the witch farm dig when you came out?
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. I think, although the absolute highlight for me was, because my wife came over with me, and because we thought, "Oh, we'll make a bit of a holiday out of it." And it was on that really rainy day we had, you remember, we ended up having to pull up the tents in the
Mm.
wind, and it started bucketing down with rain. Well, my wife, she went out for a walk and got caught in the rain, and got all muddy. And she sent me this message saying, haha, I'm sure you're getting muddy. And I sent her one back because it's when we decided to call it off when all the lightning started coming out, and we
Mm.
all went back to the catering, and I was having a lovely roast dinner, and my wife was still sludging through this mud. She was head to toe in that, and I was actually relatively clean for once in archaeology, and I was having a warm meal, and then she started cursing my name because she was still out bush or hiking, and I was me supposed to be getting wet and dirty and all those things archaeology, and I was having a nice warm meal. So yeah, among other things, the highlights. That was great. I've tried to bring the catering truck of archaeology to Australia. I just haven't been very successful yet.
I must admit, the catering truck on those time team free days is one of the absolute highlights for me. There's nothing quite like getting out of a trench and being served what is usually pretty decent food, and that was no exception.
Really
that was lovely.
Yeah. No.
Oh, we've got a fourth guest appearing now. Hi,
I
Isla.
don't know. I disappear for 10 minutes to go and sort out a small child, and you end up talking about food.
That's exactly. Yeah. Typical. What was the highlight of everything? Well, the food was brilliant, not so, yeah. And we were supposed to be talking about the magnificent archaeology that came up at the place, and I start rambling on about the food truck.
I'm just going to whip camera off, but at the risk of interrupting your conversation, apologies if I'm changing tack quickly. But Sam, that was a hugely rich and diverse career, and I wondered, and this might be too hard of a question, but what was your favourite?
Favorite bit? Listen, I've been thinking a lot lately about it. I loved doing my PhD. I really miss that part of it. We were, it was just the writing, everything. I'll probably regret this again if I ever had to go back and write my thesis ever again, because I was pretty stressed at the end, as you lads know, and we know in that sort of academic circle, it's hard slog. But I had some of the greatest adventures doing my PhD, and I've had some really great ones, but a lot stuck out because we were in some really nice remote countries. So we used to have to fly. My campus was on the Gold Coast, but at this stage I was still in and out from Tasmania to the Gold Coast. So we flew to Darwin, which is, I think it's about 4.5 hours in a plane, and get right up there. You move from, if I was in Tasmania, it probably would about 3 degrees. If I got to Darwin, it would turn to 36 degrees. So it's always hot and tropical up there. And then we drive to a place called Jabiru. So it was nearly half a day's drive to get to that town, restock, get food, everything because where we were going, there was just nothing. So we used to buy, food and enough diesel and water to last us a couple of weeks for when we were in the field. And then we just drive out into the bush and start recording these sites, and it's always great. I love it so much. It's just so typically Australian that to get to the field work, we have had to cross crocodile infested waters. It was I'll never forget my first time doing it. It was my first ever time out in this part of Arnhem Land, and this is all pretty much pristine sort of area. This is the sort of place you can only get to with a permit. It's lots of Aboriginal communities in there. If you're there for a reason. So it's not like it's one of these places that are heavily touristed. And I'll never forget, we were going across in our Land Cruisers. We were just about to make this crossing. There was water over the road. My Professor Paul Tayson, who was my supervisor, he is a veteran of those sort of areas. He goes, right, seatbelts off, windows down. If we get washed away, jump out and just go for the shore. And at this stage, we just pulled up. Our front wheels were just touching the water, and you can see crocodiles out in the river on the right. And then I looked to the left, and there's 2 flipped Land Cruisers that didn't make the crossing a couple of weeks ago. And they're literally just still in the water. So I'm sort of looking at, oh my God. So, and we make the crossing. Luckily, I always had a safe crossing, but it was one of those ones where it was very tidal. And if you miss the crossing, that's it. You're there overnight. You just had to sort of stay in the car and wait till the tides changed again, because as soon as it got too high, you got washed down. So, just even getting to field work was an adventure, and then we had all the other bits and pieces that we come across. Actually walking in, and going to sites that people just you don't get to see. This Gillery site. It's the largest contact rock art site in the southern, if not the world. Just with what had I think 1,172 individual motifs on one panel that I
Mhm.
recorded, and it was just astronomical. And it's those sort of things. The archaeology is brilliant, but the journey to the archaeology is also excellent.
Yeah.
And it's all that, even though I whinged and complained about the heat and sleeping in a tent for weeks on end, and the only food I've been able to have is the stuff we've been hiding in a tent that's all dry and can't be, because it's so hot, we can't have anything fresh. But it's all that great sort of fun that comes with what we do as archaeologists. Yeah.
Quick question on the Aboriginal archaeology and research. You must have seen, correct me if I'm wrong, as an assumption here, but you must have seen quite a change in your career in terms of how that's been approached and the sort of going about things perhaps more sensitively or the correct way. And I wonder if you could talk to us about that.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah, I guess Australian archaeology's really evolved so much with the way they interact and work with community. So you might hear me say TOs or traditional owners. Is what we generally call the First Nations people of Australia. So, yeah, it's changed to one where even my PhD was very much what we call community led. So we talked the elder of who was part of the language group of the area. And he pretty much said, I want to know more about what's happening with these bursts of activity that happen when when new things are introduced to the community through when the missionaries came there was a change, when the Macassans came there was a change, and he wanted to understand more there. So we do a lot, I think, of community led archaeology. So we let the communities we work with um, take that charge, and we become the archaeological support. But it differs so many places where you go. Even stuff I'm doing in Victoria, it becomes very community led, but it's also development based archaeology. So working in like Melbourne CBD and the outer suburbs, it's all about housing and development. So you're always it's always that ethical dilemma we have with Aboriginal archaeology, is that you ultimately recording and destroying sites that are thousands of years old, and it becomes a little bit depressing when you get that. But you also have those nice wins where we actually go out and record and preserve sites, and we actually can get oral histories from these places. They've been handed down. We get those people that have those connections to country. And it's been really a privilege to be involved with a lot of that. We go through smoking ceremonies, we go through different sort of processes to actually even when I was doing the PhD, we had to have a smoking ceremony just to enter the site, and then they had to chant and let them know, the spirits know, that we were coming and that we were coming here to do good. We weren't here to do evil. So it's that real connection to country, I think, that we've seen that we didn't get a lot of back in the day. When I say in the day, archaeology is only very really new to Australia. Only really, we had a lot of people that used to go around, and the antiquarians, the museum people, or people who had a science background that had an interest in archaeology, would go
Those old
around.
sausages, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we didn't really have professional archaeology until about the 60s. And that's when Rhys Jones, he was a Welsh archaeologist from Cambridge, came down and did a lot of the first stuff in Tasmania to start off with. And that's where it really started rolling along, and that's where we sort of get this divide. And now I find it strange sometimes doing so much work, like in the UK, for example, where you've got so many layers of time. Well, we've got the same here in Australia, but they're separated by two different legislations. And I sort
Mm,
of so we when we're working on a site, we have to, if it's an Aboriginal site, we have to go under the Aboriginal, whatever Aboriginal legislation we have in the area. Then if we find historical archaeology, so in a lot of Australia, that's from about late 1700s, 1803 onwards. Um, that's when the other legislation, and then you got those quirky sites that have to have both legislations. So you've got to get two permits for the one site, and of course, permits take a long time to get through, and you sometimes you're waiting months on end. So yeah, we do tend to do things separately. So this day and age, I do a lot more, I guess, teaching and of historical archaeology, and I've got lots of um, lovely pet, oh, yeah, I get on rants and rambles, sorry, so I'll go off topic, but, I guess one of the nice things we do, and it does fit in nice to how we actually operate as archaeologists in Australia, is actually, uh that real involvement of people and knowledge and community. And one of my real good pet projects, I'm really loving this at the moment, and you guys have been involved with a similar one, your Nightingale, Operation Nightingale sort of work. We've got one,
Mm.
so my good friend and colleague, Dr. Darryl Wesley at Flinders University, and we're both ex-Army Reserve. We were both in the Army Reserve when we were undergrads, so we were in the green for a while, and we both really liked our time there, but obviously decided to move on to our archaeological careers. And we've started up Project Warhorse, which is what we're doing at Flinders, where we're doing similar to what Op Nightingale and that do, where we've actually got veterans coming in and doing work. So we're actually using a lot of our skills, I guess, that we've sort of bought from communicating with Aboriginal groups and different communities, and bring that over to, I guess, the veteran community, um, and understanding those, people coming from the military, and how they're integrating back into, a civilian career and life. And yeah, it's been really nice to sort of be involved with that, and you see how all these different skills we learn as archaeologists can be used in all these different places.
It sounds fascinating, and you may well have already answered my next question, but I'm honor bound by the Career in Ruins contract to ask it.
Yeah.
You've had a hugely diverse career across geographies, across the globe, and is there any part of it you're particularly proud of?
Um. Uh. At different times, I'm proud of different things. Yeah, I'm probably most proud at the moment the work we're doing with the Project Warhorse stuff, because it's that giving back to the veteran community. It's nice to be hanging around with a bunch of veterans again. You get that sort of, the language that comes with it, as well, and some of the camaraderie that we sort of miss. So. Yeah, actually think I've really enjoyed doing a lot of that at the moment. Um, and especially seeing the faces with certain projects we're looking at. So we're looking at one at the moment in the Northern Territory, and it's actually the Z Special Units site, and this was the precursor to all of Australia's special forces. These were guys were the secret elite. They used to go out and steal Japanese boats, bring them back to this. What we found is the lugger yard, and they used to refit them out to war machines, and then just go into enemy territory with these converted luggers, and just take out a lot of the Japanese fleet. They had submarine kayaks. They were that secret that even at the end of the war, all the information were generally about them were destroyed. Government didn't acknowledge their existence for years and years and years. So all we actually know is what's left in the archaeology. And we've had a few of the vets go out Daryl and myself went out and we sort of found the sites, and Daryl's done a lot of the pre-work out in here and already plotted them. We actually got some vets to actually look at the site and actually get involved with it. So we're really hoping to get that one a bit more underway, because it's one of these stories that we just haven't, we can only tell with archaeology, and because it was so secret. So yeah, but yeah, I guess I sort of answered your question there. Mine, it's a bit more modern, because I sort of get a little bit excited with different things. My good friend and colleague Gary Vines, who I work with a fair bit, we were just recently at a conference last week, the Australasian Society Historical Archaeology, and we have different things we're very proud of. This time around, it was sabred champagne bottle tops that we found at a site called Little Longsdale Street in Melbourne. Now, Little Longsdale Street was your dodgy part of the city. It was so the specific place we were digging. There was a gangster that used to live there. His name was Squizzy Taylor. Now, for all those that I'm sure across the pond there, you wouldn't know who Squizzy was, but during the 1920s, he was, as Life O'Brien said, he was a very naughty boy, and he used to go around and cause all sorts of grief. So he had this place. It was his home slash brothel slash illegal bottle shop. And we found hundreds of these sabred bottle tops, and we were just going, what's actually going on here? We just found, and so yeah, we went down a bit of a tangent, and that was, we ended up doing a paper on that. We're going to publish something on that, and just a bunch of sabred bottle tops we found at Squizzy Taylor's backyard, literally in his backyard. And yeah, the one before that, just to show the sort of rabbit holes us archaeologists go down. 19 early 20th century septic tanks. We found probably the
Whoa.
most intact, over-engineered Victorian Railway septic tank, and that got me hooked. I just went and had a look at every septic tank I could possibly see in Victoria, which was all quite sad and revealing about myself as well.
That is a range range of things. So, describe to me very briefly, before I let Lawrence ask the next question. Describe to me very briefly what a sabre champagne
Um,
bottle cap is.
Yes, yeah. So, I guess it kind of, sort of the legends stem from the Napoleonic era, where the hussars had the saber, and they used to just off the top with a bit of champagne, and it became a bit of those sort of fancy thing to do, and especially in Melbourne. Melbourne was very champagne orientated. They always and they reckon it came from the gold rush. So we had a gold rush, and everyone was making money, and obviously champagne started becoming quite popular. So we do actually find a lot of these sabred champagne bottles at different sites around Melbourne, but not in the quantity we found in someone's personal home, really. So that's the sort of angle we went on, is that, he was a pretty flamboyant fellow, and, him and his wife caused all sorts of grief, and they didn't really have to hide, behind it, because I think they just wanted to rub it into the police's face that they could do all this, because we had not as bad as sort of American prohibition, but in Australia from about 1916 to 1966, they had the 6 o'clock knockoff. So you weren't allowed to have alcohol after 6 o'clock, which obviously in Australia is, almost detrimental to one's health. So of course all these what are called sly grog shops turned up, and people used to buy their sly grog on the side. Yeah, but Squizzy actually had proper champagne, and he was sabering the top of them. Yeah.
That is a level of decadence I aspire to in life now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same here.
Excellent. So, Sam, we've heard about pride and some great pride in there. What about envy? Who or what or where are you envious of?
Envious. Oh, you guys. No. Oh, listen, I've oh, Listen, yeah, I worked with a fellow when I was in government. His name was Don Ranson, and he's still around, but he was one of those first archaeologists to sort of come out to Tasmania. And I just had the pleasure of being able to work with him when I was in government for about 5 years I was there. And even now I'm back in town. I'm catching up with him tomorrow for coffee. But we used to catch, even when I didn't start my PhD, and he retired, we used to catch up every couple of weeks. And some of the stuff he did in those early years of really understanding, because there wasn't a lot known about, especially Tasmanian Aboriginal archaeology, what him and teams used to try to find and try to nut out and really, use that archaeological brain thinking, oh, we've got this here, we've got how do we solve this? So I guess I'm very envious that I wasn't sort of born a bit more around the time of my, these older archaeologists, because they just have so many great and I guess, we're going to be that generation, hopefully not sooner rather than later, but we'll be that one.
It's just round the
But
corner, pal.
yeah, I guess I'm very envious of, like, I couldn't be around and sort of share those adventures back then. So yeah, that's probably where I'm envious the most. Yeah.
It's all for us to make our own adventures. And to be honest, Sam, listening to your career in ruins, I think you're doing all right, buddy.
Yeah,
You're doing
Thanks,
all right.
man.
And we're glad you made it through the crossing with the crocodiles.
Yeah, so am I. I'm trying to drag my wife up there. She hasn't been on any of my Northern Territory field work, and she flat out refuses because I've shown her way too many pictures of me getting far too close to. Well, we try to avoid crocodiles at all costs, but you get too close to for comfort sometimes.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Sam, you've listened to the podcast. You know what comes last in terms of
Yes.
questions. Uh, as you know, Lawrence and I have developed a working time machine, and we give all of our guests a return ticket to somewhere in the past. So, Sam, where would you like to go and why?
Yeah. I've been pondering and pondering this all day today because I got to go out in the field again today, and I'm thinking away. I'm thinking, "Oh, what can I possibly, I've gone and seen so many things, and I've wanted to go back in time so many times. Yeah, I will be very greedy with your time machine, but not this time. I think so. Back when I was just turned 18, I just started university, and I was working out in the south of Egypt, and I was out there with this Egyptologist, and we just started recording sites, and we went out into the desert. A little of a long story short, we sort of got caught in a dust storm. Camel was a little bit reluctant, but we found what we were looking for was an unfinished obelisk of Seti the First, and it was just the top of the obelisk. Everything else had been carved. And what happened is that they'd obviously started carving and got this obelisk done, and then it cracked in half. And they had this decorated piece at the top of this obelisk, and they recycled the stuff they didn't do. But I would love to go about, and I would love to go back in time at that moment when they were carving it, and just be that fly in the wall where they just got this lovely ornate Seti the First obelisk, and it just cracked right down the middle, and that look on your face, that of I'd love just to see that, because let's face it, you were carving something for a pharaoh that was pretty prominent in that time in Egypt's history, and you think of this, as we like to say in Australia, bugger moments.
That's very good. That's sorry, Boo.
Can you imagine being that one mason who's just chipping away? You've spent maybe the best part of your life doing this. You've been chipping and chipping for years, and then suddenly, oh, what a thing to see!
Yeah.
It's a good choice actually, Sam. There's in a similar vein, when working on Easter Island, we were looking at one of the moai that was along the moai roads and that had come out of the quarry, beautifully completed, carved, like over 10 meters tall, and yeah, that we know that they were sort of stationing them along the road and pinning them down overnight, just migrating it to its final resting spot. And there's this one moai that's clearly just gone doop, and fallen over overnight. They haven't quite tied it down hard enough, and it's snapped in half. Yeah, exactly the same. I'd love to be there for that moment when they're like, "Oh, Dave, whatever your name is, yeah, Rarotonga, you haven't tied that down hard enough, or yeah, whatever it was." And what the forfeits were, like these
Yeah.
days when you do something stupid, you have to get a round of drinks in or something like that. But what that would be for
Well,
them.
that's it.
I sort
Yeah,
of
you
imagine
sort
it
of
would
start
be a
wondering,
bit
don't you?
grisly. Oh, thank you, Sam, for joining us so much. It was
Thank
fascinating to hear about your
yeah,
career in ruins.
thank you so much.
Genuinely, the diversity of experience there. Anyone listening who's embarking on a career in archaeology will listen to this and think, "Wow, there's a lot of cool things I can go and do," and maybe head down to Australia and meet Sam
Yeah,
and study and see a different part of the world. Somewhere I would love to go. It's certainly on my bucket list of places to
uh,
visit in the
you're
archaeological
you're
world.
always welcome.
I think Australia is our third largest audience on
Hmm.
the
Really? Oh,
podcast
great.
downloads. So hopefully this bump you guys up to second.
Fantastic. Oh, spread the word.
Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks for tuning in. As we said at the start, do make sure you head over and like and subscribe things on our YouTube channel. Go and watch a video podcast, see Sam's lovely face, see little Isla bouncing around on Lawrence's lap at times. And we will see you hopefully soon with our next guest. Thank you.